iPad in. This is predominantly about the Flip, a little less about the iPad, but I do absolutely want to bring in the iPad within this context, so we'll be doing that. I've been excited by and into the idea of flipped instruction for a couple of years. You'll hear a little bit of how I kind of came across it. The idea, it actually started at South Con. Most of you probably heard of the Khan Academy and the work they have going on. That was the first time I heard of the concept. And at that point, I've been blogging for a few years about instructional technologies and really starting to ask myself, how much of it is just, throwing stuff to the wall and see what sticks? And there's so many kinds of ways to use technology, tools and apps. What can really make a difference? And when I came across this idea of flipped instruction, it struck me right away as, wow, here's a way to use technology that really makes sense. And I find that in conversations like this with teachers that they're thinking the same thing. And I do these online workshops and people quickly get excited about it. One of the big things I'll try and get across is, we're going to hear stories and learn about folks who have done these extensive flips. And this morning in the keynote I talked about the flip high school. You don't have to do that. You can start, flip a week, flip a chapter. And just start small and ease into it at your own pace and decide what works for me, does this work for me? And the other thing that's interesting is I've seen it applied across all spectrum of academic subjects and all grade areas. Although I will say, I would be tentative to use it extensively in early young grades. I'm just finishing up an online workshop I'm bringing out that had 40 teachers from one school in Texas. And they had quite a few K1, 2, 3 level teachers that were doing this. Maybe on the weekend do one. I mean, those students are awful young to have to consume content online, and you need to have your parents embraced in this subject. But that being said, it doesn't mean you can't consider doing it. Just keep the doses small. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. I went through this stuff this morning. I won't go through it again. I'm very proud to be part of the College of Westchester to teach there. I work as CIO, and Emerging Ed Tech is the website I run, emergingedtech.com. Over on, I have channels on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter as well. So different ways to consume the kind of content where I'm sharing lots of stories all the time, articles about tools, about ways to use them, and we're already having a lot more guest posts lately from teachers, from administrators, instructional technologists. So a great place just to learn. And the objectives for today, we're going to talk about what is the flipped classroom, why would I want to do this, how do I get started, and how can the iPad be a tool in this environment for some of the unique characteristics it brings to this idea. Turning the traditional classroom model on its head. I'm going to say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I don't know if that really fits, but somebody sent me an article recently that somebody else had published about it, and it had this graphic in it. They didn't credit it. So the flipped classroom, what the heck is it? It is, and this is a definition that I made up. I mean, this is kind of my perspective on it. It's a form of blended learning which encompasses the use of technology to deliver learning content outside of the classroom and allow the teacher to spend their time in the classroom more interactively. And to me, that's really one of the key deliverables about the flip, is that it changes, allows you to change how you use class time and to hopefully go down a more active learning route, a more personalized, differentiated learning route. And we're going to hear about a lot of those ideas as we work through this material. The most common approach, the one that's spoken in the media and written about very often, is the idea of videotaping your lectures. And there's a lot of ways to do that. That's much more than just talking ahead and staring at a camera and being more interesting. But you don't have to do that. There's many other ways to approach how you digitize content. That's one of the things that I write about on the site from time to time. I find new tools where they make it really easy to bring together different kinds of digital content, maybe voice over it, so just to make some small or larger piece of digital content yourself, where you don't have to just try and record a lecture. There's many approaches to it, and there's tons of expert content out there if you're comfortable with that. I have had people say, if I used other people's content in my class, my parents would be ticked because they're paying for me to teach them, and they would see that as me not teaching them. But the flip side of that is, there's expert lectures out there. There's very interesting, informed, great content out there, and I think it makes some sense to at least consider leveraging that sometimes. It's also known as flipped teaching, flipped instruction, reverse instruction, and other types of terms. Years ago, when I first started learning about this, I came across a great article by these gentlemen in which they talk about what the flipped classroom is not and what it is, and I think it's kind of a good place to start to maybe clear up some misconceptions. So it's not a synonym for online videos. It's not about the online videos. They can be a tool. They can be a part of the classroom and often are of the flipped classroom. But it's ultimately interaction and the meaningful learning activities that occur during the face-to-face time that's most important. It is not about replacing teachers with videos by any means. If anything, it's allowing you to do some of what many of you probably really want to be doing, to use your time as a teacher in a more personalized way with the students. It's not an online course. It's not students working without structure. It's not students spending the entire class time staring at a computer screen by any means. In fact, usually that's not part of it, but there are a lot of variations when we talk about Clintondale High School this morning. So their flip, or their approach to it consists of using personalized learning tools in the school in the first part of the day, and then going to a traditional classroom later in the day. So it's not as much about the learning content being consumed outside of the school. So there's many ways to twist this. And it's not about students working in isolation. What is it? It's a means to increase interaction and personalization and contact time between students and teachers, an environment where students take more responsibility for their own learning, a classroom where the teacher is not the sage on the stage, but the guide on the side. You've probably heard that before. A blending of direct instruction with constructivist learning, in a classroom where students who are absent due to illness or extracurricular activities, such as athletics and field trips, don't have to get left behind. So the more of your content is available online, the more opportunity it presents to alleviate that situation. And it's also a place where all students can get a more personalized education. So let's start to talk more about, those are conceptual, and get a little more closer to how this can work. I thought this was a good article to discuss some excerpts from, to give a sense of one teacher's journey into learning about the flip and maybe make it more meaningful in a way. So John Soash wrote, have you ever experienced a unique and rare moment when after doing something the same way for years and years, you find yourself asking yourself, why am I doing it this way? And very often the answer is because that's just the way it's always been done. And he mentions how he came across some articles from Aaron Sands and Jonathan Bergman. And you're going to hear their name a few times. These guys have kind of become flip class rock stars. They wrote a book that's pretty popular. John Bergman has been touring the country. I think he's sponsored by IST, the International Society for Technology and Education. I probably don't have that quite right. But this was some of his early writings when they talked about how they decided to video their content because their students who were involved in extracurricular activities were losing out. They weren't there to consume, to hear the lectures. And they said, let's try this. Let's record some of these lectures and put it out on iTunes. And the students were like it. They were downloading their computers and then in the classroom, it allowed them to get more hands-on. They are science teachers, and it allowed them to do more interactive work. So what used to be the homework was now being done in the class where they were there to help, and the students could help each other. And the traditional lecture was now pushed outside of the class, so hence the flip. This guy decided to give it a shot himself. I began implementing reverse instruction in my high school anatomy and physiology class. It was his third time teaching it. He had a lot of PowerPoint slides built, and he started, as he says here, he labor-intensive process of putting them on the web, of voicing over them and putting them on the web. And in some cases, he was also using Google Docs, which he mentions a few times. And Google, for whatever reason, had to change. Now they want Google Drive. So to get to Google Docs, you have to sign up for Google Drive and become kind of synonymous, but they sort of changed their vernacular because they moved away from just the idea of just the document tools to the fact that they had storage space that was available with them. So in some cases, it was just Google Doc presentations where he was putting out the equivalent to PowerPoint slides without the voiceover. And he mentions here, I provided a lecture note outline that are required students to fill out. So one of the questions I often get when we talk about the flip is, what do you do to help ensure that the students are going to consume the content? And we'll talk about that. I have a slide about that. Recently did an article on emerging ed tech about that. And it's a very important consideration. And this is a common technique, a lecture notes outline. I do that with students when I teach an emerging technologies class, and just for the reading alone, sometimes I will give them a notes outline. It's a fill-in-the-blanks thing. It's really easy, but it's something to kind of encourage you to really, not just blow it off, not just come in and try and read it fast before the class. You've got to read it. I want this notes outline completed. Sometimes I will have points of credit associated with it. Sometimes I won't. Sometimes I won't tell them whether I'm good or not. So it's a bit of a personal choice how to approach that, but it's one technique just to help encourage the consumption of the content. And another thing that'll come up here, and something you may be thinking about, is this isn't that different from a lot of what's been done. I mean, when you send somebody home to read something, in a way you've done a little bit of a flip, and you free up some time in the classroom. Maybe you send them home to watch a video. Many of these concepts aren't rocket science, they're not brand new. They're just repackaging a little bit. But very often, a lot of new ideas that are very successful come from just repackaging existing ideas to some extent. So with class time liberated from the lectures, I was able to incorporate more hands-on activities, projects, and helping students better understand confusing and challenging concepts. He says, I wouldn't say my first year was a complete success. He had a lot to learn. And then he goes on to share some lessons learned, which I think are helpful. So make sure that you clearly and carefully explain the purpose of reverse instruction to the students. I would add a little bit of a caveat to that. I have had some teachers say, if I use the label flipped classroom, if I say that we're doing this different thing, it can become an excuse to the students to say, oh, you know what, I don't like it, it's not working for me because they're doing this flipped classroom thing. So you may want to consider that, and you definitely do want to give them a sense of these different expectations if you're going to do this. And if you're going to do it for a small portion, and guess what, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to try a slightly different approach. But you don't have to give it a label. You just explain that. We're going to send you to, your homework is going to be watching some videos, or maybe you're going to send them to a rich website or something along those lines, where they're going to be consuming a lot of the lecture content. And it's important to, prior to that content, to introduce it a bit. Don't just kind of, hey, you don't know anything about this, you're going to go home and you're going to learn it through a video or whatever, and then come in and talk about it. You're going to have even more success if you prefix that with some introduction, and then have them go home, consume the content, and come back in and review it. This guy even, I won't open the link here, he created a little commercial to introduce the concept of the flip. Stress the importance of the lectures, so students can't just zone out and watch them without paying attention. This is where something like a lecture notes outline can be a big help. You can also tell them, hey, listen, in the morning we're going to come in and I'm going to randomly ask you guys questions, and I want you to give me some informed feedback about the material. There's quite a few techniques you can try along those lines. Hold students accountable to the lecture, so your credit or no credit lecture notes checked at the beginning of the class period. Beware of technical problems. This is very important to consider. Depending upon how you're delivering the content, is it possible that students might not be able to get it? Do they not have internet access home, or is it shaky internet access? In areas where there are, particularly high socioeconomic challenges, you can really have a challenge. Some students may not even have devices. So you really have to think about that. And you may have situations where you have to think, do I have to run something on a jump drive or a CD? Do I have to make sure they can get to the library after hours? You're going to have to think about that as a possibility. Consider creating a portal for students. So that's really important. Delivery. How are you going to deliver your content? In higher education, the LMS is a very common thing. You kind of got your answer right there. And in K-12, LMSs aren't quite as popular. Something like Edmodo's gotten very popular, and that's pretty close. If you're using Edmodo, that's a great delivery mechanism. There's a lot of other approaches too, and we'll take a look at some of those. He mentions again, Google Docs as a way to share presentations, and that is certainly a way to do that. Not necessarily videos, but traditional documents. Google Docs, if you're not aware, again, Google Drive, that's what you're kind of calling it. Another kind of side note, a real cool benefit of Google Drive blending together, is collaborative ability. So you can, if you have, so Google Docs has a word-like, they have a word processing tool, they have a spreadsheet tool, they have a presentation tool, I think it might have something else as well. And all of them are collaboratively editable, which is really cool and kind of sophisticated. You can't do that with Word. There's probably some way you can do it by putting it down, but I don't know how you do that. But if you create a document in Google Drive, and you can share it to whoever you want, and you can permission them appropriately. So you can say these people can read, these people can edit, and whatever they edit is stored in a revision history. And it's really neat. That's pretty powerful and unique, and easy to use as well. And they have special versions. They have called Google Apps for Education. So that's something if you find this particularly interesting, and I'm going to talk to your administrators or instructional tech people about it, where are Google Apps for Education. The beauty there is you can kind of automate the creation of the accounts. So if you have an email account associated with your students at school, that they can kind of automatically have access to Google Apps for Education. There's other advantages as well. And it's not the pricing structure. I think there's a certain amount of that that's free, maybe entirely free. I apologize, I wasn't remember that. So now that you've freed up class time, you need to use it productively. This can be a challenge. You spend all your time and energy developing lectures, and how are you going to use your class time? And we're going to focus on that a bit as well, some different approaches to using class time. The iPad is great in that regard because there's all kinds of cool tools that lend themselves well to engaging class time activities. So the point is, you can start small and try some flip. Oh, you know, I realized last night these were backwards, these slides. So this example that he gave is a great classic kind of example of an approach to the flip. But I like to emphasize you don't have to jump in with both feet like this. You can flip just a lecture or two, a chapter, a week. You can use existing digital content that's already out there. You can turn content you have into standalone content. It might be a little bit easier than you think. Voicing over PowerPoint, once you've figured out the mechanics of doing it once, is not very difficult. And there's a lot of other kinds of cool tools out there. We'll talk about some of them that allow you to take your own content or mix content together that you find from different places and turn it into some new standalone visual content you can deliver. So getting back here, the point is you can start small, try some flip construction, tools and techniques, and decide if you think it's something you wish to pursue further. So, why do I want to do this? Why would I want to go down this road? Sal Khan kind of says it good. Sal Khan has written a book called Old World Schoolhouse Education Reimagined. I think it should be required reading for teachers and administrators, particularly everywhere. It's really a fascinating read, and I highly recommend it. In there, one of the things he says is the old classroom model simply doesn't fit our changing needs. It's a fundamentally passive way of learning, and the world today requires a much more active learning approach. The old model is based on pushing students together in age group batches with one pace for all curricula and hoping they pick something up along the way. So the flip really puts you in a position to be able to really try and differentiate. The idea of differentiated learning, personalized learning has been around a long time, but it hasn't been practical. And you guys know that better than anybody. How are you possibly going to find the time to treat each student somewhat individually? Well, this allows you to take a bit of a step in that direction. If you're delivering the traditional lecture content in a rewind, replay, video format, or some other digital format, and moving some of that out of the classroom, you need a little more time in the class, and hopefully you can then begin to think about how you can get a little more personalized for the different types of students. But it's not easy. These gentlemen here again, John Bergman and Aaron Sands, wrote this book. They published it last year, Flip Your Classroom, Reach Every Student in Every Class Every Day. When I captured this screenshot, it was $12.96. The price seems to go up and down a little bit, but not terribly expensive. And a fantastic read, a short read, and a great way to learn a little bit more about this. And I cite that because this next set of slides focuses on, they've got about 15 of these in a long chapter called Great Reasons to Flip Your Classroom, but I think it gives you some good ideas about why this can make sense. It helps busy students, right? Today's students are busy. If you're a high school student and you're on the ball, you're thinking that colleges want to see some of those extracurricular activities. It's not just academics. The extracurricular activities are a big differentiator. And you shouldn't have to lose out because of that. So the more content that you push out and digitize, the more opportunity that those students will have to not miss that. Of course, a lot of this is written, these guys are writing from the perspective of a pretty fully flipped class. It helps struggling students. Many students are thrilled when they're able to pause, rewind, and replay lecture videos and absorb new content at their own pace. And it also means that when they're sitting in class, they don't have to furiously take notes. They can focus a little bit more on the material. It helps students of all abilities excel, and that's important. It delivers benefits across the full spectrum of abilities. If they're struggling, they can absorb material more at their own pace. And those that are ahead of the curve can jump ahead a little bit if they want to. And it really can lend itself to students across the spectrum of learning abilities. It increases student-teacher interactions. So that is, again, one of the real deliverables you're looking for. Many teachers who implement the flip will emphasize that the ultimate benefit is the time they get to spend with students in the class. The bottom line is that you'll have more time than ever to interact with our students rather than just performing your lecture. It allows teachers to know their students better. So we've always believed that a good teacher builds relationships with students. And if you are spending more time with your students, you're going to know them better and better understand what their challenges are. And you're also more likely to get insights that you might not have gotten otherwise if you share a few stories about that kind of thing in this book. Students learn at different rates, so it allows for real differentiation. While watching class lectures, students look at a topic and speed the video up, slow it down. The instructor can decrease the assigned work on a topic that a student has shown understanding of to free up more time. They get clear on the topics they find hard to grasp, and students who master the materials move ahead. And it changes classroom management. I mentioned this kind of thing in the keynote this morning too, that when students become engaged in this way, when you're doing active learning pursuits in the classroom, they don't have enough time to be bored. How often have you been delivering a lecture and somebody's kind of yawning over there, this one's getting a little fidgety in his chair, and so on. If that lecture content is more typically consumed outside of the classroom than in the classroom where you're getting involved and doing activities, there's not as much time to be bored. So some of the students who used to misbehave are too busy and engaged to do that. It also changes the way that you talk to parents. So you move away from that discussion about, is Johnny behaving in class as much, and really start to talk more about learning. And a dialogue with a parent can be far more productive than a discussion about why their child won't do their homework or won't sit still in class. I thought these were kind of amusing, some of the wrong reasons to flip your classroom. So it's not about that you're going to magically create a 21st century classroom, and they emphasize that pedagogy should always drive technology and not vice versa. It's not because you're going to think you're going to become cutting edge. It's not about the new tools. It's not because you think it exempts you from being a good teacher. Good teachers are much more than delivering good content. And it's if you think it's going to make your job easier, it's not. It's really not. It's going to change the nature of your job. There's a curve to get over as you flip more and more content and get through that. But now what you're doing, and I think that's the big thing. I think a lot of people realize that, geez, even if I do that, then I really got to think about how I'm doing it in the class. So another element of why that I'll hit on briefly is some of the learning science. There's a great book out there by Jackie Gerstein, who has her doctorates in education. $2 on Kindle. By the way, if you're not aware, Kindle has a free iPad reader, so you can, and it works great. So you can buy Kindle books and read them on the iPad. I do it all the time, so you don't have to be limited to just what's in the iBookstore. And so for $2, she's got this great book that talks about learning science. And I love this diagram, and it's a centerpiece around a lot of what she writes about. And she brings in a lot. She's knows much more about this than I ever will, about the learning sciences behind this, and she brings a lot of that into this, this writing, this dialogue. But here, just talking about this cycle. So in the upper right-hand corner, you're introducing some kind of content first with some kind of experiential engagement. So an activity, a project, games, simulations. You're starting from somewhere in terms of introducing some kind of concept. Then in the next quadrant down on the right, now they're getting into the concept exploration of video lectures, audio lectures, content-rich websites, and different ways to consume digital content. Then you're giving them some kind of assignment, and it starts to bring back in some of the ways you can help to enforce that they're consuming the content. You may have an assignment. Maybe they have to do a reflective blog. Maybe they have to participate in a discussion group. And then you bring it full circle with the creative, some kind of project in the classroom, work in the classroom. So here, her example is creative, personalized projects and presentations, but whatever kind of in-class active learning activities you're doing. And there's lots of other writing out there about how the flip can, is very much in line with a lot of learning science ideas and academic ideas. One of the articles I wrote recently is about how it facilitates active learning methods of all kinds. So we've probably all come across these terms: experiential learning, project-based learning, problem-based learning, discovery learning, inquiry learning, constructivism. They're all forms of active learning, and the flip really facilitates that, and there's a link there to this particular article in which I reference specific written publications focusing on each of those different types of active learning and how the flip facilitates it. So there's the learning science. There's these great ideas we've seen. Another reason is because there's a growing body of evidence saying it works. We went into a lot of this morning. I'm not going to go through it again, but we saw Clintondale High School, that University of British Columbia example where they flipped just 1 week and saw these stellar results on the test. I have much more of them out in Emerging Ed Tech, and there's a link in the, and this is out on the Edmodo, so there's the Edmodo code. I hope you're taking advantage of that. That's really a very neat thing. So get out there, go on Edmodo, it's free, sign up. And then what we should have thought more about is putting a list of all those codes in a place. In fact, I'll ask Dave, we should put it on the main page, so at least if you get to the main page, then you can pull up a list of all the codes to go finding those groups. And so this slide is out there, and all the links. Some of the links are linked, some of them aren't. I apologize if they're not just copy and paste. You can get the source articles. So there was another one here. There's 2 articles that I've written in the last year or so, sharing a number of additional empirical evidence about the effectiveness of the flip. So, and keep in mind that a key reason to flip is to free up class time to be used for active and differentiated learning. And the body of evidence that supports the effectiveness of those kinds of techniques is huge. So, in addition to just this idea of studies coming out that say the flip works, there's already a huge body of evidence about how active learning and personalized learning can really be effective. And that's what you're enabling here. So that's the story of why. How do I get started? Okay, that sounds like a great story you just told me, but it still sounds a little scary and overwhelming. How can I get started doing this? And I'm going to give you a few tips. So 4 things we want to really think about if we're going to do this. I have to create and or find digital learning content. I have to deliver the content and make sure they're consuming it. And I have to think about using class time, and I put that in caps because that's a big one. That's a real big one. Finding good content. Well, the quantity and quality of expert content has just never been better. There's so much of it out there. One advantage of MOOCs, now of course, only to think about something like that if you're in high school, but MOOCs have tons of free content. Everybody familiar with MOOCs? The media's been beating us over the head with that for about a year or so. Massive online open courses in higher education has become a big topic, and it's scary, particularly to for-profit institutions, which aren't such a bad thing, by the way. Only for that. There's some bad players out there, but most of us are pretty darn good at it, and actually modeling a lot of very good educational practices that the community colleges and others are finally starting to look at and say, you know what, we need to be more like that, focused on career and the right skills. But anyway, so there's tons of great content out there. We're at the Khan Academy, we've talked about you can't get an education without getting beat over the head a little bit with the Khan Academy. He's on some like major commercial. It's something with Bank of America or somebody. But I forget what the relationship is. He's really gotten a lot of press. Salcon's just a fascinating story if you haven't had a chance to learn much about him and what he's done. This is a gentleman who has multiple degrees and was making beaucoup bucks in the finance industry 6-7 years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. and had a cousin who was in, I think, about 10th grade, and a very bright girl, just hit a brick wall in math class. And this is a bright guy, he wanted to help her. He wasn't that close to her in proximity, so he started recording videos, and he said, I'll put them on YouTube. And new people found them and started watching them. And within months, there was this groundswell of, I love how you're teaching this stuff. And it was just, it's just simple. He's not a rocket scientist, he's not a teacher by training, but he's good at explaining things. And he would just do these little explanations, create these little videos on a little chalkboard he has in color. And he did more and more of them, and it's, a much longer story, but before long, he got inspired enough by what he had done and this huge groundswell of interest from students all over the place saying, this is fantastic. I couldn't understand this when my teacher taught me, but I like the way you're teaching it. And eventually started a nonprofit company that down the road became financed by Bill and Melinda Gates to the tune of just tons and tons of money. And now he's got this whole big foundation. And the Khan Academy has become about a lot more than just the videos. They're really cutting edge on a lot of how these learning technologies can be worked, can be used. And when I last visited them now, you can actually sign up independently and use this tool set. And they're using things like badges and gamification. They're using things like learning analytics. Schools adopt their program, and you get this very rich set of learning analytics tools so you can really see where are students spending the most time, where are they struggling, let's go right after those gaps. They have a whole philosophy that for mastery learning, so that for a student to move from one subject to the next, they've got to be able to get all 10 questions right in a random question bank. They're bringing a lot of really at the forefront of where this is going. TED.com, Technology, Entertainment, Design, I think is what the TED stands for. TED.com, tons of really interesting stuff out there, also geared towards older and more appropriate for higher ed. Show of hands, what do we got here in terms of high school and higher ed? Okay, so mostly middle school or less. So middle school? And everybody else, let's see the hands on elementary. Okay, so I'll want to hope I leave some time at the end to talk about that, because as I said right after that, flipping in the really young grades is kind of a different sort of consideration. But of course, the other thing about this that I think you'll come away with is, first of all, we're talking about a lot of different kinds of resources that can be used in a lot of different kinds of ways. And these tools and techniques are just that. They're tools and techniques, and they can be leveraged to a different extent. So that's part of where some of this stuff, even if you don't choose to go with a traditional flip, can be useful for younger grades. So TED.com, just fascinating experts talking about all kinds of stuff. I find my 16, 17-year-old kids going just watching stuff on their own. And like intense scientific stuff. Like, wow, that's really cool. I don't understand what that guy's talking about to you. So just one of the million sources. Here is an article on emerging ed tech. 7 online classroom teachers can use to augment their own. Now we're at 15, right? So we got to 2:45. Show off my baby. This is the website, emergingedtech.com. As you can see, my latest post from the other day is looking for teachers to submit ideas, and I just got a bunch of them since I put this up there. I love posting teachers and students. I'm hoping some of these bright students who are doing some incredible stuff will submit some articles. And I'm glad to help edit it, polish it up a little bit. Many folks don't really even need that, but if you do, I'll do my best to help make you feel like you're producing something really professional, find a nice picture to go with it. And it's great. People love to hear that kind of stuff, and you can sign up to get these posts right in their email really easy. If you do sign up, every year I update a free resources ebook. It's now about 115 pages of resources, all free. And when you sign up, you get that ebook as a PDF, just to draw you in. The search engine is kind of cool too, because it actually searches across my site and about 5 other major EduCause, Classroom 2.0, a bunch of different sites all at once. So it's a good tool in and of itself. That's So here these are. The top two. YouTube has a whole education section devoted just to education. I should have a link to that. But if you go on the YouTube site, I'll have to. I think it's just YouTube/education. But if you go to YouTube and do searches, you'll find tons of education material. Openculture.org. Oh, I know. This is linked, so I can go on right now. All right, so it is. It's youtube.com. You can't see it up there. It's youtube.com/education. All education material. Of course, it is on YouTube, and I realize that's a very real consideration for folks, particularly in younger grades. But there's a lot of ways to take those YouTube pieces. In fact, we'll see a little here, and deliver it in a private manner. So you can take videos and make it available to the people you choose in a place where they're not seeing all that YouTube clutter. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Tag, Khan Academy, Open Culture. I think it's openculture.com. See, now this is really morphed. This article was written a couple of years ago. But they have free courses here, but now they got all kinds of other free stuff. And of course, one of the things that happens with these free sites is that after a while, they're not making much money and they start putting all kinds of content out there. This article is a little old. Cosmo Learning is another source. I think they've become more of a MOOC provider, but they have a lot of content out here, economics, engineering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. LearnersTV.com, Academic Earth. I've heard a lot of good things about this Academic Earth, and they've recently done a bit of an overhaul, although it looks like they also may be moving more towards trying to marry into this new concept. But the point being, there's lots of good free content online, and it's not necessarily that hard to find rich, useful content. And you know, if you're using the iPad and you're in younger classrooms, there are more and more types of applications that deliver this through apps. So that's the idea of finding content. But it's much more common to create content. So let's talk about a bunch of approaches to that. Screencasting is the most common approach to do this. Interestingly, Apple, it's really weird, they don't allow traditional screencasting. And traditional screencasting says whatever's on my screen, I can capture. And in some of the more sophisticated apps, you can capture that as well as what's going on with the camera at the same time. Apple doesn't permit it. They did for a very short period. It was actually an app, and then they pulled it back off the market again. But there are a number of ways to get around this, and just the other day I came across something I haven't had a chance to try, but I put a link to it up here from Screencast-O-Matic that says, here's a way you can actually fully screencast. But what isn't are available in various flavors are kind of a whiteboard casting tool. So you can have a whiteboard kind of application, and whatever you're doing with that whiteboard, you can capture very easily in a video format that can be played back. So, and first, and this is important too, right? It's very natural with the iPad to think specifically about iPad apps, but there's a wealth of free internet-based tools that you can use as well from the iPad just as easily. Or, in this case, I know these things work well for Macs or PCs and can be consumed on the iPad, so I'll just mention them briefly. And it's hard to stay up on top of this. For all I know, Screencast-O-Matic may even have an iPad app version now. Screencast-O-Matic is one of the longest standing screencasting tools. It's been around a long time. It's free. It works very well. It's web-based. You don't have to install anything. You can use it on the PC. You can use it on the Mac. It is at screencast-o-matic.com. Although I think if you just do that, you should be there. There's a quick demo video right on the home page, and you can get up to 15-minute clips for free and unlimited clips with the pro version, which is $12 a year, which is very reasonable. You can easily publish to YouTube or create standalone MP4s or FLV format videos. So very popular, very widely used tool. Jing is another one. Jing is from the folks that make Camtasia. I'm a big fan of Camtasia. Camtasia's higher end. It costs a couple $100 for a teacher license, but it's really, if you get into this, really start to create a lot of videos, you'll probably want to go into something like this. And the thing that Camtasia gives you is much more robust editing capabilities, as well as a lot of built-in mechanisms, so you can do things like I want to put in a star that I can put text in, and fancy things like that. It really allows you to do a lot. But man, time can fly when you start using this stuff. I find with Camtasia, I will spend sometimes an hour just to make a minute or two of video because you get caught up in all the mechanics of it. But these things are simple. Jane is a beautiful piece of cake. It's limited to just 5-minute clips, but that's one of the reasons I keep it in here, just to remind me to say, when you're doing screen-based stuff, keep it short. Don't put together a bunch of 30-minute videos, especially the younger they are, right? A couple of 3 5-minute videos is a lot more effective than one 15-minute video a lot of times. So you want to think about that. Break it into chunks. So Jane is a freebie. It's limited to 5 minutes long, and it makes it super easy. You just click on this little sun-shaped icon, and it will record whatever you're doing on the screen and whatever you're voicing over. So there's the Jing website in there. It's at techsmith.com/Jing. Screener is another one, so screenr.com, and they have a companion website where that I put the link in here. It's community.articulate.com. It's from a company called Articulate. A lot of times they do this. These freebies are out there because they want you to think about buying their higher end product. But some of those freebies can be pretty darn powerful. And this is the video that I found on Screencast-O-Matic that speaks to, so if you go to Screencast-O-Matic, you'll probably be able to find this. It shouldn't be too hard. That speaks to how to, a methodology, I haven't had a chance to try it yet, to be able to do full screencasting. So I'm looking forward to learning more about it myself. Portable whiteboard apps. So you may have heard of EduCreations. This is a fun app. It was, I believe it was free. If it wasn't, it was a couple of bucks. It was really inexpensive. So a great tool for doing this whiteboard casting. So again, you get, the iPad becomes a whiteboard. You get a bunch of tools for drawing with different types of pens or drawing shapes or inserting text. And whatever you do, you want to illustrate how to do something. You can talk over it as you're doing it, and then it packages it up as a video that's really easy to play. And there's a lot of apps like that out there. Screenshot is another one. I'm pretty sure these are all free. Zigzag board is another one. And then the other thing, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on with the iPad around creating more sophisticated, integrated, interactive types of content. And you'll have a good opportunity to learn about some of those here in these different sessions. I will not profess to be an expert in these. I've heard a lot of great things about Nearpod. I'm pretty sure that's talked about in one of the sessions coming up. So as I say, an all-in-one solution for the use of mobile devices. They're saying all-in-one, but it's really about creating these engaging multimedia presentations. Here's a few more: StoryDesk, HaikuGek, Free iPad Creator, a bunch of different tools that are geared towards creating multimedia presentations using the iPad. And now a couple of web-based tools. So there's more and more of these becoming available out there. Really very useful, mostly free tools that allow you to create web-based digital content that can be consumed on any device. Meta.io is one I've just written about recently. So this was a great way to combine parts of more and more videos. So you can actually grab different pieces. And here's a great way to kind of combine that piece of, I want to use visual content, but I don't feel right about just saying, oh, here's a 30-minute video from whoever, and that's your learning. You might want to take parts of multiple videos and weave them together with your own text overlaid over that to kind of put your spin on it. And this is a great tool that allows you to do that. Not very hard to use at all. Meta.io. TAC is another one I just learned about that lets you just put up a picture and associate some video with it. And one thing that was nice about TAC, and so you could create. So these things start to blend together in my head after a while because of the similar functionalities. One thing that stuck out about TAC that was cool is that there was a comments piece. So you can make a TAC, you can make it free, and there's an automatic discussion board. So you can say, hey, I want you to go out, I want you to look at the content we've created here. Let me go out and pull up the site. So as I was just kind of experimenting with this, I created something really quick. So, all right, yeah, so you can take a video from YouTube, put it out here, and again, you're going to deliver it in your own, in a place that's separate from all the clutter of YouTube. You can make it private and just give the URL specifically to whoever you want to, and then you can put your own little text up at the top. So I entered some text around this. So you can be telling students, hey, watch this video, and I want you to look for this, that, or the other thing, and then I want you to put in a comment speaking to that. So a really quick, dirty, easy way to create an interactive piece of digital content, and you can use this could be a video you created yourself and put it on YouTube, and you can put it on YouTube and say that you want it to be unlisted, and then link it here. So now it's not publicly accessible. If somebody has the URL, they can find it, and search engines don't index it, so they're not going to be able to find it, stumble across it. So you can combine those ideas sometimes to, if you want to focus on privacy, because I know that that's a concern all the time. I just don't want to put things out anywhere, especially when I'm going to ask students to participate in the discussion online. Another approach is PowerPoint slides, right? So many folks have PowerPoint slides, and I apologize, I should have made a point of learning some of the analogous tools in the iPad. And, what's one of the most common presentation tools in the iPad? Anybody? There's something I just can't remember the name of that I think a lot of folks use. Do you know? Resi? I didn't catch that. There's one of them, presenter, or maybe Keynote. Maybe Keynote's the one. Maybe VoiceOver Keynote. So there's probably some tools out there that allow you to do the same thing. But those that happen to use PowerPoint, I mean, it's all over the place. It's pretty ubiquitous. Voicing over it, there's tools built into starting. I know it's in 2007. I don't know what's an earlier version. It's in 2007, 2010, around 2013 version of all the Office products. There's an ability in there to voice over it, and it's not very hard to figure out. You want to have a decent microphone that you can connect. The microphone on the computer might not be good enough, but sometimes they are on the laptop. And you want to do something where it's quiet to be able to do it. So a lot of the considerations aren't just about the technology, it's about other things like that. I want to think in advance a little bit about what I'm going to say. I don't want to have to script it all out, but I want to think about that. I want to record in a quiet place. I want a good quality sound. They were mentioning in one of the sessions this morning that people can tolerate lousy quality video really well. They can't really tolerate poor sound. So you want to pay a little attention to that. But it's not very hard. Once you've done it once, it's like, oh wow, that really wasn't very hard at all. And then they can become very easy to self-play. You open up the slides and tell it to just go ahead and play the slideshow, and the video, the voiceover just records along with the slides. The voiceover is recorded with the slide. And you've made a PowerPoint presentation into a self-contained tool that students can use to learn. This is really cool. I love where this is going. It struggled at first when it was in beta form, but now they seem to have cleaned it up. So ed.ted.com. The fine folks at TED have done this website now where you can take any YouTube video and you can flip it. What they've done is they've given you the ability to take that video, again, choose who to deliver it to. You just put in email addresses that you want, provide the URL to just who you want. And the fun stuff is you can build in quiz formats around this associated with it. You can build in little textual pieces that will go here to learn more. And there's a little more structure. This is just really cool, the fact that you can take any one of these videos and really build something pretty robust around an individual video. So there's tons of examples out there. Some of these colors aren't translated very well on the screen. Let's see, I'll just take a chance and pull them up random. So yeah, here's what I want to show. So here's this video, and you can see again, much like the TAC, it was able to put a little information out there, but this is the rich tool set that takes it to another level. So you watch the video, and then they have these pre-structured things of think, dig deeper, and discuss. And I think it was under the think that you can create the, so you can create quizzes. Now it's not, a rich, robust set of quiz capabilities, but it's pretty functional. And then dig deeper. So you can kind of say, here's additional resources for you to explore, and then a discussion area. So it's free, self-contained, pretty easy to use, and really some pretty powerful way to create stuff that's uniquely yours, delivered in a private format, leveraging existing video content that's out there. So we've talked about finding content, creating content, then you've got to be able to deliver it. So Edmodo is a great tool, very, very popular as a delivery format. Wikis. Wikispaces is very popular in education. There's a couple other wikis out there that are used pretty commonly. What a wiki is a way to create your own website wikis. They give you very simple tools. You don't need to know HTML to allow you to say, all right, you want a page, here's a page, and there's formatting tools like you would use in Word or word processing type of application. I'm going to put some stuff up here, I'm going to put some links, I'm going to put my text, and wow, I've got a web page. Oh, now do you want to create a sub-page off of that? Well, click here and do that. So you can create these structured sets of web pages, and before you know it, you've got your own website, and it's really pretty easy to do. A lot of teachers have used wikis to deliver flipped class content, but just to use as a web page if they don't have some other mechanism provided by the school. And of course, then as a web page, you can get to it from your iPad, you can get to it from wherever. Weebly I've heard a lot about, haven't spent a lot of time on there, but I've seen a lot more folks do this. Weebly is another tool geared primarily towards, specifically towards education. No, I take that back. I don't remember specifically how much they're purely focused on education, but I've had it come back to me over and over again in flipped class assignments. One of the things I do in the online workshop in the little weeks is about, okay, let's put some content, the first week, a couple of weeks in, we start creating content, and then after that we have to deliver some content. And some of it lately has been coming back to me through Weebly. So somebody has a Weebly site where they're sharing their content. So kind of like a wiki, but they're trying to make it even easier. So it's also another tool worth investigating if you're looking to be able to deliver your own content. Google Sites is another one. They have a Google account. They have a tool called Google Sites. It's very much like a wiki. It makes it real easy to create your own web pages and put your links there and embed videos and deliver content and have a class website. If you're in higher ed, then these are the kinds of tools that are commonly used. There's LMS or CMS, learning management system, course management system, class management system, all relatively analogous. So some important things about delivering digital learning content. Remember to consider the possibility that some students may not have easy access to the materials. You have to think ahead about that and what you're going to do about it. It's less and less of a problem in this modern age with the smartphones and the tablets and all the devices everybody has. And with very young students, you really have to embrace the parents. They should be aware of what you're doing, and you should probably limit how much flipping you're doing. Then, working to ensure the students consume the content, right? That's going to set you up for failure if they're not consuming the content. They're coming into class unprepared. A problem teachers have faced forever with traditional textbook assignments. So some ideas. Overuse that, huh? Some ideas about how to go after that, requiring notes outline. We talked about that already. Fill in the blanks, no outline. In higher level grades, you may want to ask them to create an actual outline about the material that they watched, reviewed, or read. Start classes with questions or discussions. Some students, if they know that they're going to be called on at random, that's going to, not all students, but some students, that's going to encourage them to be more prepared. They don't want to look silly in front of their peers. Pop quizzes, right? That's always been an option. Hey, we're going to, or they know that there's going to be a quiz. So that's another way to think about. And personally, I really kind of like to mix these up. I use a little bit of these techniques in different ways in a given class. Easter eggs. This can be fun for younger kids too, the idea, especially if you're going to use the phrase Easter eggs. Hidden in the content. So maybe that's going to be one of your approaches sometimes. Hey, you're going to watch this, and I want you to look for this, or I want you to watch for this. Just another way to help encourage the consumption of content. A more sophisticated one for higher grades, or even middle school, online discussion forums or reflective blogging. You're going to go home, you're going to watch this piece, and I want you to give me a submission. And it can be, sometimes I just have to be limited. I want you to tell me these 4 things that came out of the material, and give me 2 sentences that are your ideas on why this makes sense or doesn't. Or it can be richer, and maybe for more of a grade. That, hey, you're going to watch these things, or maybe even a series of videos we're going to watch over a couple of nights, and I want you to write a few paragraphs or a short paper on it. And leveraging the advantage of the engaging nature of the iPad. So there are, I look forward to learning more about this myself in some of these sessions. Applications like iBooks and subtext that really give you a more interactive experience, so it can go well beyond the idea. Here's some content. Maybe it's some reading content, but there's links in there where they can go and learn more or research more. And maybe you're going to say, hey, you know what? I want you to read this. It's just a couple pages, but I want you to pick at least 1 or 2 of the associated references in there and go out and explore them and come back and tell us a couple sentences about them. So the idea, again, being that as the iPad evolves, as all these apps are becoming available, and the idea of learning materials on a digital format are becoming more and more interactive, the possibility for them to be engaging and to be used in the classroom, in a traditional classroom, in the flipped classroom, in the assignments outside of the classroom, just keeps growing. And last but not least, using class time. So what the heck am I going to do with class time? Well, one of the primary benefits of the flipped classroom is the way it changes how you use class time. It's common to begin class with a review of the, so these are some of the things you may want to do. One of the things certainly is review right off the bat. Here's what we covered. And when you have tools like Evernote, iBooks, subtext, you've got a lot of opportunity for students to have engaged while they were consuming the content, taking notes, consuming related materials, and when you come in the morning and start going through this, they can reference that material and reference those notes and links as part of the review. Reinforcement. When it comes to the reinforcement of learning through hands-on activities, the iPad offers a lot of possibilities. So a few examples. In math, these are some great tools geared towards the younger grades. I think I saw somebody, somebody tweeted on the TL iPad hashtag about Factor Samurai this morning. You must have come across that in one of the sessions. So, My Math app flashcards, Math Puppy, Multiplying Acorns, Motion Math. Motion Math actually published a whole study about that tool being used in the elementary classroom very effectively and really impacting engagement grades. Factor Samurai. So there's so many cool tools that if you're into using the iPad in the classroom that really give you a leg up in terms of classroom activities once you've done the flip. So there's more than just games. Here's a couple other ones. Math drills, math board. Also, I'm pretty sure both of those are free. Those last 5 were all free. English. So there's more and more ways to think about how to use these tools in the English classroom and other language arts classrooms. Subtext, iBooks lend themselves to these very well. Teachers are no longer bound to the textbook, and students are no longer limited to the teacher's knowledge to gain the appropriate context. Definitions for words or names are provided, but also with something like subtext searches in Google and Wikipedia and so on can be linked very easily. Teachers can construct situations where students are seekers of knowledge. I believe there's a whole session on subtext that is being offered between today and tomorrow. Foreign languages. Franca Gilbert wrote this piece. She's one of the teachers at the Franklin Academy, and she's going to be doing a session, and probably all see them that all sessions are being offered twice. So from this one today, you have an opportunity to give it tomorrow. And she gets really in depth in, it's a great article on how to use this in a foreign language class. classroom, and I think some of this certainly lends itself to the English classroom. So interpretive communication, she gives a bunch of resources, some online newspapers and web apps, iVideo, and the press mobile. In this case, French language tools and applications where they can really go and get immersive. Audio and audiovisual interpretive types of applications. She has a whole list of here. Interpersonal communications, where students are engaged in interpersonal oral communication about a particular topic, and she talks about things like Skype and audio boot, puffer towels, as ways to create interactive processes that you have to do in a foreign language. So now you're really applying the language. Sciences, there's so many cool things out here, and here's just a couple of them. This rat dissection, online dissection. And actually, the labs can be done in a virtual sense, and can save you a lot of cost and save those squeamish folks a little bit. ChemDraw, another application we covered on the site recently. There's so many of these coming along, very interactive, engaging, applied science types of tools. And here's a link to a whole category out on the Emerging Ed Tech website. And if you go out there. So right under popular posts, scroll down a little bit, category section. So posts over the last 5 years in all these different categories, and there's the one about iPads and other tablet devices. And they come up in chunks of 8 or 9 articles at a time. And you can just scroll through them and check any of them out, and easily go back to prior entries. In fact, go right back to the one that just came up. So here's the one about the subtext that was written by Allison Edwards, who was presenting on subtext here at the conference. So a whole category of places to go and learn about more apps that you can use on the iPad. So just a few more things about learning, continuing that learning journey about the iPad and about the flipped classroom. There's also one of those categories I showed you is flipped classroom. So a bunch of resources there to learn more about that. And just a quick advertising. I just started a new site called flipclassroomworkshops.com where I'm publishing articles about the flip. And I do run online workshops. The next one will be in the middle of January, a 4-week online workshop, $125 to get immersed in the process. Use the, you'll get the book that I'll show you. You get that as a free part of the class. And then the best part of that is working with other teachers. We do a lot of discussion forums to work with the assignments together. We learn a lot from each other, and it's a lot of fun. So the other thing is this book's available out there on Amazon, as well as for a little less money as a PDF. So some great ways to learn more about the flip. And I also started a Facebook page. So if you're a Facebooker, you can go out there. And here I'm sharing these articles every day. It's fascinating. All these articles coming out about schools and teachers giving this a try, and I have no shortage of material to post out there about that, as well as different articles specifically about different resources and techniques. So great way to learn some more about the flip. And that really wraps it up. And we've got a little bit of time for some questions if anybody has some. About 10 minutes. So does that make some sense? Give you some ideas to try and consider. Anything at least, you saw a bunch more tools. Again, this is out there on the Edmodo page, this whole set of slides, so you can research those links. And if you see me walking around later, feel free to ask any questions you may have about this. And, yes?
In terms of the YouTube that you showed us, of how to like, make it private, stuff on the side, does that also eliminate the watching
No, the problem is when you embed that video, I'm not aware of any way to stop, because at the end, YouTube's delivering that video.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's nothing that I'm aware of. It's worth, I was going to say it's worth complaining. It's worth making a note somewhere to the site that, hey, this is really annoying. It would be nice if there was a way to turn it off.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that they can enable that kind of functionality or build it into the site. There's probably, if you scroll down the bottom, there's probably some links. There's going to be somewhere on there where you can say, you know, submit something, contact us.
There is a website called TubeChop. Have you ever used this before? It allows you to like put in a link to a YouTube video and just click exactly like from 1 minute, second, yeah.
Yeah, and Meta.io will let you do that. So if you use that Meta.io, which its whole piece is, its all purposes, you tell me how much you want of any video. So I want this much of this one and this much of this one, so that will also allow you to do the same thing. And that was TubeChop.
And it doesn't have any ads, it's just your,
But is SchoolTube still available? SchoolTube was like YouTube's kind of,
but I think also like if your school has Google Apps, they can block a lot of the stuff that comes through on YouTube through their filter when they set up a Google.
Yeah, I don't know if they have some abilities to kind of address that particular Meta.io. .io is a weird extension.
Yes, and I know YouTube does allow you to, when you embed it in another site, remove the watch.
Oh, yeah,
So
okay.
you go to YouTube.
Yeah, I know you can remove the ads in the
you
other
can
places.
select
All right, cool. I should have thought of that.
on YouTube.
So
I'm like 99% sure.
Let's
But
take a
yeah,
look.
WordPress eliminates, you can choose not to have it linked to anything except just that YouTube video. So if you have a WordPress blog, you can just put in exactly what you want them to see.
All right, so let's just take one at random, and we go to the share, and we go to the embed.
And that also right where it says to show suggested videos, if you just uncheck that box.
Yes, you're right. By default, that's on, and I never even noticed it.
So then
That's
any
it.
site
I
you
do
can
this all the
embed
time.
in, you're good.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to see up here. So when you hit share, it'll give you, usually it'll give you the URL, but then if you hit embed, it gives you this magical code that's gotten simpler and simpler, fortunately, that you can embed in any HTML page, and on most of them will work. But when you're doing that, these 3 switches will turn things on and off in that embed code. So, and I've seen enhancements. I'm not even sure what that is. They added things here. I didn't get a newsletter. And use all the embed code. Who cares about that? I thought they used to have, well, it's evolved. And you can choose the size here in this little drop box. But you can also override it in the code. You can directly go into that code when you're going to somewhere and say, no, I want it to be, and that's actually very cool, but it will resize anyway. So if you say, no, I want it to be 540 by whatever, it might look a little weird depending upon the parameters that you use. Any other questions?